Universal Disclosure podcast proudly welcomes back Mr. Stephen Bassett.
And so it's not out of the question that over the next 30 to 40 days, 1 million or 2 million people may see that hearing. How anybody in the Pentagon or anywhere thinks that in the face of this expanding, colossal media change that we're going through, and the popularization of media at this level, and they think that they can keep this truth embargo going, I can't imagine what drugs they're on. So this is exactly what you expect to happen when the world, or the United States, is about to enter into an extraordinary transition affecting every person in the country, every political institution, religion, and everything else. This is what you would expect to happen. What we've been trying to get. It's not going to be a U.S. process. It's not going to be just the U.S. It's going to be extremely international, global, which is going to make it a lot easier for the president to navigate, because he's not going to be carrying this burden on his back. There's going to be plenty of people supporting the processes. And so it's not one nation trying to scratch out a little more territory. These other nations are going to be doing the same, which means that resistance within military and intelligence groups within any of those nations is going to pretty much collapse. It seems pretty clear to me that the president-elect is being teed up to take this issue on and wrap it up. I would encourage him to involve the Congress, because I think it makes it less partisan and more, I think it's just less partisan, and I think it's the way to go. But however he does, he's being teed up to do it. So I'm saying 60 days after the inauguration, I will be quite surprised that if we haven't had disclosure. And I assure you, a lot more is going to happen in the coming months, okay? We will destroy anything, ourselves, our friends, animals, cats, dogs, plants. We'll destroy oceans, biospheres. There is nothing that humans will not destroy with the technology they have. Or other things. It could be drones. It might have a pilot in it. Start swarming around our military ships in advanced facilities. We will blow the holy hell out of them. We will absolutely decimate them. We will destroy them. That's what happens. But that's not happening. So what's the problem here? Okay.
Right point exactly.
What? Captain Salas and I were able to sit down and he was able to present personally to her what's in those affidavits. And so I'm anticipating that the affidavits of these witnesses is very soon going to start getting exposed to a number of the subcommittee.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only, and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
Welcome back, one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, meeting the moment. My name is Mike, an active UFO/UAP field investigator here in Southern California, with my friend and co-host,
Reverend Stu in Melbourne, Australia.
Reverend Stu, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great as usual. Lots of interesting, fascinating things happening in our world at the moment. And this time leading up to Christmas, there could be a little disclosure present underneath the tree this year.
You know, I think that's pretty interesting, right? We're coming up actually on in a couple more episodes. We're going to have our grand finale here, and who knows what's going to happen there. It's going to be quite interesting, I think. But before we got, let's not put the cart before the horse, right? We're actually started doing this in real time, right? We had to wait until this moment before we could have this conversation, because we're going to be bringing back Stephen Bassett, the UFO lobbyist from Washington, D.C., to sort of debrief with us about the hearing that just happened a couple days ago.
Yeah, Mike, I watched some of it and I read some transcripts, and I feel quite positive about the hearing. I was very intrigued by what came forward.
I do as well. There's a couple of new kernels sort of that kind of came out in there. I think some of the folks in the UFO community, as it were, might be a little disappointed, but I have a different view on it, and I do think it's positive. The fact that we're even having a second hearing like this in Washington, D.C. in and of itself, that's a big deal, folks. And kind of has to happen in a slow way. That's the legal system and the legislative system. It's incredibly, unbearably slow. Unfortunately, that's how it is. But anyways, we're going to be talking with Stephen again today and hearing his thoughts about that. So for those who don't know, Stephen Bassett has spoken to audiences in 20 countries about the political implications of UAP/ET phenomena and disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He is co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and executive director of Paradigm Research Group, a 501c3 nonprofit providing education, consulting, analysis, and political activism for a post-disclosure world. So keep that in mind as the year end comes up and you're looking for your different tax donations, as it were. His advocacy work has been well covered by national and international media, including CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Washington Post, and New York Times. Bassett has appeared in many documentary films, and his lectures and interviews are well represented on YouTube. In 2013, PRG organized and conducted a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington. In November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. In December 2023, Stephen co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in Los Angeles, a new media-centric organization aiming to align those working with the UAP/ET research arena with writers, directors, and producers to work across every facet of the global entertainment industry. PRG recently launched an activist project, Shift Storm, seeking UAP hearings as soon as possible before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
Wow, I'm absolutely honored to have this gentleman on our show. He's been a real powerhouse and moving this whole disclosure movement forward.
He certainly has. So it is definitely, once again, our privilege and honor. Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes back Mr. Stephen Bassett. So, Stephen, welcome back. Thank you so much for your time and visiting with us again. It's great to see you.
My pleasure.
And yeah, why don't we just jump right into it? I mean, we reserved some time with you several weeks ago just to make sure we can, talk with you right away, as it were. And just a couple days ago, there was another UFO/UAP hearing in Washington. Were you in the room for the hearing? And then, what were people saying in the crowd and in the hallways?
Yeah, I booked 20 interviews post hearing. Year number, I don't know, 12, 13. And obviously, you understand why I do that. Yes, I was in the room. I got in the first time the easy way because Danny Sheehan and I came in, and everybody in the front of the line just jumped all over us, and we melded in. I had to get in that room for the first one. Now this time was different. I knew I had to earn my way in, and so I had a group of people that we all got there at around 5 a.m.
Oh my God.
And as a result, we made it in. There were already people there. Somebody been there since midnight. Somebody's even earlier. One person was sleeping on the sidewalk in a blanket wrapped completely up. I like this because it's showing that people are really serious. And fortunately for us, they also they changed the seating. They took out the stadium seats and put in regular floor chairs, and they were able to add about 15, 20 seats. So when we finally got in 6.5 hours later, there was only about 20 seats left. And so Bob Salas and I got in, didn't get into the second or first row, would have liked that. So we're not turning up in the photos, but maybe there'll be some more photos.
That's all right. Just being in the room, I think, is got to be pretty awesome.
Of course, yeah. And being there at all. I mean, the line outside, which was there for many hours, was energetic. It got pretty long. I'm sure the 100-seat viewing room was also filled up, and just the energy was even greater than it was last time. A witness like Elizondo would walk by, everybody swarming, trying to shake his hand. Superstar like James Fox shows up, selfies. This went on for hours. People in a great mood, all positive. And that's nice to experience that. And there's going to be more of that.
Excellent. Yeah, that was one of my questions, actually, was what was it feeling like in the room and such. So one of the I don't remember where I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard or saw it advertised that Daniel Sheehan was also going to be speaking at the hearing, but he didn't. And I'm wondering if you happen to know, why that maybe changed or what.
Sure. There's some confusion. Everyone, again, there's an activist movement, legitimate activist movement now. It has been for some time, and we just get better and better at it, which is why the truth embargo is basically cooked. But some people over the DOD are not prepared to take the cake out of the oven, as they say. But Danny, New Paradigm Institute, and Danny and his chief executive here in D.C., Jim Garrison, they've had a lot of contact with MUFON through Ron James, who was the head of media for MUFON and their principal contact on the Hill. I mean, Ron James is using his cameras as his way in. Has interviewed a lot of people on the Hill. I mean, he really should register as a lobbyist. He doesn't need to, don't get me wrong. But they've been working on trying to build a substantial coalition. And so, taking advantage of this hearing, we sent out a very substantial number of press releases and, of course, social media. And they held an event. They were limited in what we could do because there are very strong restrictions on permits and so forth. You can't hold a press conference. You certainly can't do it in the building or on the grounds. But the park right next to the Rayburn building was okay. And so we scheduled a meeting, briefing, whatever the hell you want to call it, for exactly 30 minutes after the gavel came down. And I think it ended right around 11, 12:30, 1:30 as we expected, maybe about 1:40. 30 minutes later, about 100 people had gathered over in the park. And as the press release indicated, Jim Garrison spoke briefly. He is the executive director of the office, New Paradigm Institute office in D.C., which is based down by the Capitol. And he introduced Danny, and Danny spoke to the issues, obviously, regarding the hearing. He also talked about the coalition that's being built because MUFON is 50-some years old and has chapters all over the place. New Paradigm Institute is new, but it is a full-fledged organization, activist organization. And so there's tremendous potential for sharing resources. And then Ron James spoke, right, on behalf of MUFON at length. And then the chairman of the board of MUFON, Dave McDonald, he spoke. And then I spoke for a few minutes about Paradigm Research Group, but overall the issue. But most importantly, I introduced Bob Salas, who would come out to try to get in that room, which I helped ensure happened. And we sat together. And of course, I introduced him because he is trying to testify before Congress, along with a number of other SAC-based officers who were present when the UAP, non-human tech, turned our nuclear missiles off on a number of occasions, which is probably the single most important thing we know about ETs and that they've done, at least in the modern era. So that went well. Then another nice lady, I forget her name, spoke about some projects that she was in. We took some questions, filmed everything, and then we were done. So some people confuse that with Danny speaking at the hearing. He was in the room. And this time, see, this is interesting. In the first hearing, I got in a little ahead of him, and I got a perfect seat in the stadium seats, and so I'm in these photos, one of which became one of the Time magazine photos of the year, which is, of course, up on all my social media, right? So it was cool. This time, but Danny, it was a little late. He was just off to the side. He was 6 feet from about 4 or 5 feet from being in that photo. This time, I didn't get in, and he got in before me. And he's in the second row, and so you can see him easily because Danny is easy to see. But I was 2 rows back, so it's even now. So I was kind of happy about that. Again, it was an amazing day, and a lot was happening. A lot of filming was being done. People were meeting. There was so much I couldn't keep track of it all, which is what you expect to happen with respect to an extremely important issue involved with political engagement. And I assure you, prior to just recently, that was not possible, and that was not happening, but it is happening now.
Nice. So just for clarity, and it's something I hadn't considered. So when you were going to the hearing originally before it started, it's not like you could have a reservation or a ticket or anything like that. It's just open, first come, first serve, which is why you would wait in line overnight, effectively, and no assigned seating or anything like that, right?
A few reserved seats, I think, were given out, maybe even less than last time, but there were a few reserved seats put out, but not too many. And they got tons of requests, and they knew that they couldn't start doing that, and so what they did is add more seats. So yeah, but it's first come, first serve, and it's going to continue to be that way. Some people, I understand, did pay some line standers. This is actually legal. It's legal, and it is part of the protocol, at least unless it's changed. And so lobbyists will pay a line stander to hold their place for as long as necessary at a pretty nice rate. I don't know what it is. Wouldn't shock me if it was $50, $60 an hour. And then they would show up and then take their place, right? Okay. Somebody did that for this line. I don't know who it was, but there were a couple of people that paid line standers. That's not the same as holding a place, right? It's not kosher for you to say, oh, I'm holding a place for so-and-so, and then they just join you in the line. That's not kosher. There was a little bit of that, not too much. But they paid line stander. But one person who was not a lobbyist, and he hadn't paid for a line stander, but he was there. The line was long. He said he offered several people money for him to take their place. And he offered one person $800.
Oh,
so he could take their place, and then they could go to the back of the line, take their chances. Turned him down.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool.
I wouldn't take that either. I'd be keeping my place.
When he told me that, and I said, then he walked away, and I said, well, wait a minute. let me rethink this, right? But whatever. I thought that was pretty cool. I hope he made it in, or at least made it in the TV room.
Wow. Okay, so then, just out of curiosity, any idea how many people were in the main room, and then how many people were in the TV room?
Main room was about 80 to 90, possibly as many as 100. And I'm told the viewing room, where they have the TV set up, is about 100. So you're looking at 200 max. We're able to, however, and I don't know the circumstance on the first hearing, but this hearing was live broadcast by multiple entities. I'm going to do an amalgamation and post how many entities live broadcast that hearing. C-SPAN did it. Scripps News did it. There's a newspaper in the UK did it. NPR, and I think others. And so what is not known right now is how many people watch this hearing. Now, I'm going to do my best to try to get a handle on that. But of course, it's now available in archive on all these venues and more, right? And so it's not out of the question that over the next 30 to 40 days, 1 million or 2 million people may see that hearing. That, again, tells you where things are. And by the way, some people have been complaining about coverage. I have been amalgamating the coverage for my print media archive, and soon I will be able to post it, but it's a very laborious process. But I'm up to about 100 media articles about the hearing. 100.
Nice.
Mainstream media. So it's been covered extensively, and it may even be more than that. I hope to have those up and linked and put out a link where people can go view those by Sunday night.
Nice.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'd done a little litmus test too. I sent out a quick text to one of my nephews, and I was just like, "Did you happen to hear anything about the hearings?" I was like, "If you're hearing about it not from me, then that's a good sign," because he's not super interested in the topic. And he did say he had seen a couple of postings and such about it. So I thought that was pretty great.
While we were watching the hearing, while we were in the hearing, I was on Twitter posting, which is pretty cool. Think about that. All right.
Nice.
You can do that. You can keep the phone. You can't do flash photography, but you actually film the damn thing if you want to. Again, we're a democracy still. But other people, by doing whatever they do, were live streaming the thing on their Twitter page. I don't know how many people did that. So I'm going down Twitter and here it's being live streamed on somebody's page. And I'm watching it there, listening it here, posting about it to my Twitter page. This is what I've said this many times. How anybody in the Pentagon or anywhere thinks that in the face of this expanding, colossal media change that we're going through, and the popularization of media at this level, and they think that they can keep this truth embargo going. I can't imagine what drugs they're on, but it's not going to work. It's actually really over. They just need to concede. We'll see. Won't be long, hopefully.
It definitely seems that way. So what are your overall thoughts on the statements that were made publicly? I was kind of curious.
Yeah. Now, again, I'm seeing it through my eyes. There's a core group of people, very impatient, been at this for a long time, and they want action. They want it now. One of the Congress people I talked to said, yeah, they want me to, wheel an extraterrestrial body out with in a gurney, right? And that'll make them happy. I get that. But based upon my work and what I know, this hearing was more powerful than the Grush hearing. Not that the Grush hearing was very, very powerful. It was the first hearing in 55 years. So right away, that's a big deal. But if you're trying to gauge impact near and long term, the Grush hearing was basically a single person, one person coming forward with very significant information he got from a secondhand source in the classified world, the special access world, confirmed by other people with clearances that he trusted. And he had already made a great effort to do what it was he's supposed to do and provide that information to the Intelligence Committee and so forth. And things didn't go well, and he was threatened and all that. Big story, great story. So, and it was a big splash, but it was basically one person testifying about that. They wisely added 2 more witnesses so that he wasn't alone, all by himself, having to take on the military intelligence complex. They brought in 2 excellent wingmen, I like to call them, Graves and Fravor, who had their story to tell, but it was well known, and they were asked some questions, but by and large, there was so much they could say. This was about Grush. This hearing was quite different. What the chairman of the hearing, Mace, did was assemble 4 witnesses to come in. All have substantial backgrounds. They just don't have a single thing that happened, but they have careers that are relevant to this issue in many areas. And so 4 people present their credentials are presented. They read their statements into the record, and then they're interviewed. And so a great deal of territory is covered here, and you've got a broad spectrum of people with backgrounds. And then their testimony and answers are overlapping and reinforcing each other, which is the way hearings work, right? That's the way why they're powerful. So this was the real deal. And so as far as I'm concerned, this was a more powerful presentation to the world and advanced the issue effectively. And again, this is the hearing that you really want being watched by millions of people, which I think is going to happen. So I was extremely pleased with it, but it didn't have the classic smoking guns that people are constantly hoping for. Because they want to end this embargo now. God bless them. We are well on the way to getting the embargo ended, the truth embargo ended. There's some business to take care of. There's a few things to put in place so it's done correctly, but we're very, very close. So I was very happy with the testimony, and I think it's going to have substantial impact.
How do you feel this new administration might affect disclosure? Might they be more or less supportive?
Okay, now we're going to get into the
tread lightly here, please. You don't want to trigger people, right?
Yeah. Get a drink, grab a pizza. Okay, the situation is intense, appropriate and complicated. It always has been, but it's heating up. All right. And there was a lot happened that day I didn't know about. I mean, so many people filming. Oh, dozens of people were filming. Some for docs, some for themselves, some for the internet. Who knows? But I mean, it was just that was going on. Behind the scenes meetings were taking place. After hearing meetings were taking place, in addition to Danny and the New Paradigm Institute and MUFON's gathering. About 2 hours after that, a very special event was conducted on the Hill and paid for by the UAP Disclosure Fund, where members of Congress, witnesses, and other esteemed VIPs were invited to come and discuss the issue, which is what 501c3 for nonprofit organizations do, which is what the UAP Disclosure Fund is, and maybe the first 501c3 nonprofit political organization in this field ever. So that happened later. I did not get an invite. It might have been in the mail and I missed it. Whatever. It's okay. It's all right. It's appropriate. So that's fine. Which is to point out that there are organizations being created literally in the last year or so, powerful, important organizations with substantial directors and advisors, specifically to address the post-disclosure world that they know is coming and soon. And so the Soul Foundation, which was basically put together by Gary Nolan, a Nobel Prize nominee, and now has a very powerful group of people involved, and based at Stanford University, was set up not so much to get disclosure. Frankly, they're not doing any what I would call activism in that area. They were set up for the post-disclosure world as a scientific think tank. And then you've got the UAP Disclosure Fund out of San Francisco that was set up to some degree, I mean, to assist in trying to get disclosure, to try to do the activism, but primarily it was set up as a 501c3 political entity for the post-disclosure world, where the range of political issues to be addressed will be legion, right? And they're out in front. Smart move out of San Francisco. Now let's be clear. Once disclosure happens, every major think tank in Washington D.C., the Cato Institute, the Enterprise Institute, there are a good 6 or 7 major think tanks here, and dozens of others. Every one of those major ones is going to literally create an extraterrestrial division. In other words, they're going to carve out and say, okay, you all are going to focus on the ET issues in the post-disclosure world and all the political decisions that have to be made. And so the New Paradigm, I mean, the UAP Disclosure Fund will have a lot of company, as will the New Paradigm Institute very quickly. But until then, right now, the lead groups, the tier 1 groups, are Soul Foundation, the UAP Disclosure Fund, the New Paradigm Institute. All right, these 3 in particular, but there's some others that are also strong. And so this is exactly what you expect to happen when the world, or the United States, is about to enter into an extraordinary transition affecting every person in the country, every political institution, religion, and everything else. This is what you would expect to happen. Well, we've been trying to get. And so this is the kind of things that allow me to remain absolutely certain that the truth embargo is about to end. Oh, now to get back to the where we are. Okay, look, here's the best way I can describe what I consider the most likely near-term outcomes. And to keep it simple, I've divided it up into 2 possibilities. There are more, but here's the 2 ones that matter. And I'll give the reasons. This is going to go down probably one of 2 ways now. The first option is the better option, and I will give my reasons for that. And I will say in advance, these are not partisan reasons. I have a pretty good reputation of being nonpartisan on this matter in all public venues for 28 years. I'm not going to start now. So there is plenty of time for the Senate Intelligence Committee, could be the Armed Services Committee, but it really should be the Intel Committee because they've been leading on this for the last 4 years, there's plenty of time for that committee to hold a hearing that we've been expecting. And the one that Gillibrand has indicated she's going to hold, it is not it, unless there's some changes I don't know about. What she's talking about, almost certainly another one-person briefing on the 19th. But even if it's a hearing with public attendees and oath swearing, it's not the one we're looking for, unless she's decided to go that way. I'm talking 1 week, 20 witnesses, morning, afternoon sessions, like the Nixon hearings, the Iran-Contra hearings, all the major hearings that have ever taken place in this town. This needs to be every bit as big as those, but it won't have to last as long, thank God. So the Senate Intel Committee can do it. There's several dozen, 40 plus witnesses already that have talked to appropriate people and been interviewed in various ways that are quite substantial, ready to testify immediately. So they can take the top 20 of those 40. And I assure you, when they're done testifying by Friday afternoon, the truth embargo will be blown to bits, period, against metaphorically. And thus the president, which would be Biden in this case, could step forward almost immediately and confirm that what we've just heard is in fact valid, that he's checked with people, whatever, how he wants to phrase it. And we have disclosure, capital D, done. And then he has attained this, I guess you could say, this significant legacy of sorts that he will take with him when he retires and probably leaves politics altogether. Now, why is this the preferable way? Because if it goes down that way, what it means is when the new president takes over, January 20, perhaps a month later, the world will already be 30 days into the post-disclosure era. Every major head of state in the world will already have stepped forward and confirmed it. We will now totally have crossed the paradigm line. And things will be incredibly intense, but then they'll kind of settle down a little bit. And so the new president comes into office without this uncertainty hanging over the entire administration, while that president has to deal with a rather long list of extremely difficult problems. And therefore, the new president will certainly be the first president of the United States to engage the post-disclosure world, because it'll really start then. The celebration will go on leading up to the inauguration, but then the engagement of the new paradigm starts then, and the President Trump will be that president. This is the way it should go down. Now, if it doesn't, the way it's going to go down is that President Trump is going to take office, and based upon my observations of what is happening, it's going to get done in the first 60 days of his administration. Wow. Now, I can't predict how that will happen. I mean, I have no way that I can say how that's going to go down. The way I would want it to go down is that he helps ensure that the new Senate, the Senate Intel Committee at that time, which will be now chaired by Republicans, holds the hearing that we need. Absolutely. And I think if he puts enough pressure on the right people, we will get that hearing. And so in the first, say, month, those witnesses come into town and they testify before the Senate Intel Committee, which will be chaired by a Republican, but I don't think it's been announced who that is. It won't be Rubio, because Rubio is going to be Secretary of State. Once that hearing is done, then President Trump will be set up perfectly to be able to step forward in the East Room of the White House and say that he fully supports what has been said, that it is true, and now I'm going to proceed to do what is necessary using the legislation that's been passed to get everything out to the world's people, the American people. That's the way it should happen. But the new administration is a little less predictable. And so there are other ways that the truth embargo could end. But however it happens, that's what matters. However it goes down, whether some people like the way it happens or don't like the way it happens long term, it doesn't matter at all. Disclosure is what we have to have. And very shortly after disclosure takes place, the other heads of state will join in, and very quickly, the engagement of this new paradigm will be global. It will be multinational. And obviously, therefore, how can I say it? It's going to be difficult. What am I trying to say? It's not going to be a U.S. process. It's not going to be just the U.S. It's going to be extremely international, global, which is going to make it a lot easier for the president to navigate, because he's not going to be carrying this burden on his back. There's going to be plenty of people supporting the processes, and that's going to be everybody. It's going to be mutually supportive, and so it's not one nation trying to scratch out a little more territory. These other nations are going to be doing the same, which means that resistance within military and intelligence groups within any of those nations is going to pretty much collapse. The idea that one nation's intelligence complex is going to try to hold out against an entire world that's getting the truth out is highly unlikely. And so that's the two-way it's going to go. I will be shocked if we haven't had disclosure 60 days after the inauguration.
Wow.
And I can go, and let me give you the reasons, the key reasons. One, the new president has been asked about this issue more than probably any other president has been asked. He has probably been asked more than any president candidate. Hillary Clinton was asked a lot of questions about this issue in 2016. She may be, but she never became president. He, as a president and a candidate, has been asked more questions about this. His answers were not extensive. They were somewhat casual at times, but they were asked. As the campaign gets towards the end, though, it gets a little more serious. And he gets really serious when he gives a 3-hour interview to Joe Rogan, who has had many UAP related researchers, activists, whatever, on his program. And as he had done in other settings before, he asked Trump about this issue, and Trump said, I'm going to get the information out about Kennedy's assassination and about the UFOs. And that's important because based upon my last count, I think that interview has now been seen by 80 million times.
Wow.
Because that's Joe Rogan, right? It's not just, he's on multiple platforms, and it's going to continue. By the time President Trump takes office, that interview is probably going to be seen 150 million times. And so that statement is out there in a big way. Plus, I have noted that a number of people in Trump's sort of inner circle have raised the issue. And so when you put it all together, it seems pretty clear to me that the president-elect is being teed up to take this issue on and wrap it up. I would encourage him to involve the Congress because I think it makes it less partisan and more, I think it's just less partisan, and I think it's the way to go. But whatever, however he does, he's being teed up to do it. So I'm saying 60 days after the inauguration, I will be quite surprised that if we haven't had disclosure. And I assure you, a lot more is going to happen in the coming months, okay? Mace has already said it. She wants more hearings. Gillibrand wants a hearing December, right? So obviously there's hardly anybody in the Hill that believes the AARO report. I doubt you can find anybody that believes the AARO report except the people that put out this bogus piece of nonsense. And they don't even believe it themselves, right? It's just like, hey, gave it a shot, didn't work. So a lot's going to happen. So again, let's think about no later than the end of March. Get your champagne stocked in, get some snacks, tell people you want to party, whatever, go do Zoom and get ready to enjoy the new paradigm.
Oh, nice. I think it was perhaps today's Wall Street Journal that mentioned there's something about the AARO report. I don't know if they came out with a new report or if they're referencing the old one, but, rehashing the, nothing to see here, not from extraterrestrial origin. But to me, that also leaves the door open to maybe these things are from here or from another dimension. That's still a true statement, what they're claiming to be, which could also be a lie. But
no, the AARO study report was put together. I forget, might have been something that Congress wanted. The other report was a kind of a standard yearly thing. And I don't know if I've seen it yet. If that report was completed after the AARO study report went out, this maneuver to try to slow down the the disclosure activist movement, I would be quite shocked if it includes the same kinds of statements. If it does, this basically standard yearly report, then whoever's over there, I don't know what to say. I mean, however, okay, it looks increasingly like the new AARO director, whose name I can never remember, but you can Google it. In fact, I'll be happy to do that. The new AARO director, all the indications is this gentleman is righteous, right? In other words, he is somebody who is serious and he's ready to hit the ground running. And so that, I think, the new director was chosen after the AARO study fiasco. And so consequently, I think he clearly came in knowing that he was going to take this thing in another direction. Okay.
Mike, does AARO stand for something? Can you tell me, give me a bit of clarification on that?
The
All
All
Domain-
Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
Okay. Hang on a second. I want to get this name right. I want to get it out.
And so in a way, it's kind of like anything that is quote unquote unexplainable is what they would handle.
Not exactly.
Oh, no?
Okay. John Kozlowski. Okay. The new director of the AARO. All right. Hang on a second. Just give you a little background on this gentleman. Okay. They should have it here. Well, there's already a full interview statement up on the defense website. Okay. So I'll try to get that link up. But if you do a Google, I think on Dr. Kozlowski, K-O-S-L-O-S-K-I, data comes up. But let me see if I can get his background. Let's see. Here we go. Very briefly. He's pretty young. And he's got a bachelor degree in mathematics and physics from California State University, also a degree in electrical engineering. And he is, after completing his work in theoretical analysis, he has worked with scientists for the National Institute of Standards of Technology to demonstrate the abilities of his designs. He's also a graduate of NSA's Cryptoanalysis Development Program. And I think there is more. I think he has also worked with NASA. So he is an excellent choice. And so that is something very important that's just taken place. All right. Get back to you guys. And another reason for optimism. So again, I will be shocked if the other report has followed suit with the AARO study, but I do want to read that report as soon as possible.
I think I haven't read the full article. I just heard about it, and it, the snippet that I heard was basically the same kind of thing where it was no proof of extraterrestrial origin, which is all well and good, but I don't know if they were referencing the old one or not.
Usually the way they say it is there's no evidence indicating or clearly showing extraterrestrial, an extraterrestrial aspect to what is under investigation. That is obviously still a mistake. They're treading water a little bit there. And by the way, in terms of the name, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, anomaly is referring to a relatively narrow set of anomalies, pretty much everything related to the UAP presence. All right. It's not relating to Bigfoot. It's not about probably including crop circles, ghosts, or anything like that. It is a relatively narrow set. And so all domain doesn't mean anything in the World Anomaly Resolution Office. All domain specifically refers to the fact that the ET presence is able to operate in all of the domains that we are addressing: space, air, on the ground, underground, and underwater. And so that's the domains that are being referenced in that name.
All right, thanks for that clarification, because I did wonder if maybe it included, things like ghosts or things like that as well.
No, pretty sure.
Good to know. Good to know. So My next question sort of changes gears. I don't know, Stuart, do you have anything to chime in before we shift gears a little?
Well, you kind of covered some of the things I was going to ask, which is, are people becoming more receptive to disclosure? I mean, the general public. And it sounds like they are from what you're telling me.
Again, the number of people that believe the phenomena is real is continuing to increase, gets higher and higher. The number of people that believe it's not only real, but non-human in origin, that is getting higher and higher, all right? The number of people that are becoming aware of the activist process continues to grow every year. And it's all headed in the same direction, all right? The number of skeptics that are out there flapping their lips is actually going down every year. There are fewer and fewer of them. So in that sense, yeah, the actual hard numbers, well, there's a lot of polling going on. It's not the easiest thing to poll, but the polling continues to lean in our favor, which is another reason why the truth embargo is going to end, and the disclosure movement's going to win this chess game that we've been playing. And obviously, the number of things that keep pushing us forward, you can't count them all, but just to go back to something I just said, a presidential candidate, now a president-elect, utilizing the new media reality of the world today, which is nothing like I knew when I was a kid, right? And those that haven't adapted to the new media reality do so at their own peril. That gentleman went on a show and said he was going to release the UFO files, and 150 million people are going to probably see that show in the next, by the next 40 days, right? And so, no, this is not 1969 or 79 or 89 or 99. This is, in fact, the last weeks and months of the truth embargo, period.
Wow, that's huge. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was, I can see you've got a poster behind you of the movie 2010.
Yeah.
Now, artificial intelligence plays a part in that film and the earlier 2001. And I've personally been fascinated by the fact that disclosure is emerging and AI seems to be emerging at the same time. Is there any correlation or link between these two things at all?
Well, there's going to be clear interaction. I am suspicious. Well, not suspicious. It doesn't shock me that there's a simultaneity here, which is clearly obvious. And my theory is, I can absolutely cannot prove it, I assure you, but I like it. So that's why I like to tell it, is that the modern era of the ET engagement started in during World War II, but really got underway in 47. I don't know what was going on back in the Egyptian civilization, Sumerian civilization, ancient South America, whatever the hell. I don't know. I think they were around. I think they were all worshipped as gods, big deal. But this is not then. This is a different time, obviously. And advanced extraterrestrials who were observing us, going back just to 1900, probably were more than capable of pretty much outlining what the 20th century was going to be like. And I'm talking mostly in the scientific area. In other words, based upon what we knew and where we were going in 1900, they could kind of project what technology, what engineering feats we would achieve in that century. About when would we break into quantum physics? When would we get relativity in play? When would we move into lasers? Things like that. When would we develop computers? When would we develop extreme computers? They've been around a long time. Okay, they've seen a lot, and so this is not something new for them. And one of the most important things that they clearly would have been assessing is, what will be how will we engage? What will be our decisions about using technological weapons? What will be the trend line there? All right. And as you move forward into the 20th century, that trend line, even if they had some doubts, begin to become pretty clear. All right. So they kind of know all of this. And so in a sense, they can kind of, I'm sure they will able to project what will this wonderful little civilization be facing as a result of technological development, scientific understanding, et cetera, by the end of this century, right? By the year 2000. And I think they would have understood that we're going to develop extraordinarily dangerous weapons and we're going to use them. We're going to invent computers. We're going to invent extreme computers, and we're going to get into AI without question. All right. We are going to make extraordinary advances in genetics, allowing us to manipulate our own DNA. And we're going to make substantial advances in all chemical and biochemical areas, including the weaponization of biochemicals and even the weaponization of genetics. They knew that this was all going to happen. And it wouldn't be a matter of blaming us, meaning, oh, you silly, silly people. The laws of the universe are the same everywhere. And so if you're a planet like ours, 1,000 light years away, and you start to get where we were at about 1900, I don't care what you look like, barring, that could be some variety there, depending upon how you're designed and so forth. But at some point, you're going to get to the point where you're starting to understand the science, the physics of this universe, and understand the universe itself, be able to count stars and galaxies. They're all going to go through that same process. And it's dangerous. Okay, it's difficult. And I would suspect that a whole lot of planets with civilizations over the last couple of billion years never painted it past this particular century. Once they got to nuclear physics, once they got to quantum physics, once they got to advanced biology and genetics, they just destroyed themselves. They just lost it, right? Blew themselves up and went the way of the several trillion species that have come and gone on this planet in its long history, all right? But the planet continues, more species turn up, no big deal. Okay, so they get it. But the one thing they couldn't be certain of is how we would deal with it. We would learn how to create AI. We would learn how to make computers. We would learn how to build nuclear bombs, lasers, and everything else. But what exactly we would do with it, not so clear. Now, if they were to look back at human history, going back about 5,000 years, I mean, there was some trend lines there, okay? In other words, we were addicted to war. There was almost no weapon we wouldn't use, okay? And so that was not good, all right? In terms of science, there's a lot of indications and examples where we have been learning science and putting it to positive, constructive purposes. That's good, okay? So it's not an absolute thing, but overall, they got an idea. And so they're kind of watching. They watched World War I. That was ugly, nasty. And they watched World War II, and that was even bigger. And they're going, boy, you people, you're heading in the wrong direction. They're flying their little Foo Fighters or plasma ships or whatever the hell they were. They're flying them in our, in the theaters. German planes were seeing them. Japanese pilots were seeing them. Our pilots were seeing them. Not particularly invasive, but apparently they weren't ours. So they were kind of paying attention. And then World War I ended was ultimately ended, the timing of it, based upon the invention, testing, and dropping of nuclear bombs in Japan. And that triggered what was going to be their final agenda at that point. Whatever the agenda was before we dropped those bombs, the ET agenda changed, I believe. I'm looking forward to asking them if that's true. In other words, a well-respected nation with high values and so forth that feels like they are, representative of the best qualities of the human race, just dropped 2 atomic bombs on 2 cities and obliterated a couple of 100,000 of their own species. And they didn't need to do it. And we're the good guys. And one of the reasons we had the Manhattan Project And we put billions of dollars into it. It's one of the greatest stories in the history of human race, and it's best told in a book called The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes, who's still alive, won the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. Is that we knew if the Nazis got the nuclear bombs, it's ball game, folks. It's not going to be 2 bombs, let's end a war. But the Nazis would have taken over the planet. And so they watch this and they go, okay, we get it. You are over your head, and it's only going to get worse. And so this civilization that you're proud of, you're gonna go apocalypse on it. We knew that. I mean, the ETs knew it, but we figured it out pretty quickly. And so for all of my lifetime, there has been a steady stream of apocalyptic movies, post-apocalyptic television shows, novels, books, everything. We're addicted to post-apocalyptic scenarios because at one level in our conscious mind or in the unconscious mind, we realize that literally is looming over us like a super dark cloud, impenetrable. And we've gotten used to it because otherwise we'd go stark raving nuts. But we do consume a lot of, how would you say, mind-altering substances of every type. And so they got it, we got it. How the hell are we going to get out from under it? And so that has been core to the agenda for all of these years. Now, it's the technological trends are very powerful. And so it's not surprising that some of these technological trends can interact, okay? All right, that they might interact because they're extremely powerful. They're developing together. And so let's just pick one. Let's go to a more positive note here. In a post-disclosure era, we're going to have to communicate with multiple species that know more than we can even imagine. And if we're going to interact with them, if we're going to try to interface with them, if we're going to try to learn what they know, it's not going to be they're going to do a Zoom call and say, okay, folks, here's the deal. Let me explain how the universe works. No. What we need to properly integrate with these new civilizations, to the extent that they wish to do so, is AI. AI, okay? They provide some information. We put it into our absolute best AI systems, and the AI explains what the hell they're trying to tell us. And we can use AI to convey concepts to them in a more effective way. And so AI is going to be instrumental to post-disclosure communications. It also has the power to eliminate enough jobs to put untold tens, if not hundreds of millions of people on the street with a cup, begging for change. That's the way it is, okay? On the other hand, if we use it responsibly, it could do just the opposite. But the ETs are looking down going, you know, responsibility is not your strong suit, all right? There is no tech, no invention that you can't turn into a sledgehammer and hit each other over the head with, right? You're just incredibly good at that. It's really impressive from our point of view. And so again, that's important. Our genetic research is non-trivial, and all the genetic research we've done is going to help us ultimately understand why they're doing genetic research here, and in terms of being able to integrate extraterrestrial genetic research, which is more advanced than ours. All the work that we're doing there is going to help do that. And why do we care? Let's start with this. I'm just going to spitball that the ET genetic sciences, properly applied, has the ability to eliminate just about every disease known to humankind. It increase our age limits to 100, 200 years, eliminate untold amounts of human suffering. There is no, the principal reason that humans suffer is because the universe is entropic. You want to go into that? We can, but it's entropic. The fundamental nature of existence is that it moves toward disorder. And guess what? Death is more disorder than life. And so That is a fact. And because of that entropic principle, life has to suffer a lot. The process of moving toward disorder and decay is very painful, but it doesn't have to be. It's not a law of the universe that says, oh, living things need to experience as much pain as possible. It's just that we don't have enough understanding of the entropic process, as well as life, as well as genetics, to minimize the suffering and the pain and to extend life. We just don't know enough. And so if the ETs are able to provide the kind of technology based primarily on genetics that will change that, I am not somebody that's going to raise their hand and say, based upon my religion or my personal beliefs, it is the responsibility of people to suffer and humans to suffer so they can properly understand, I don't know, the nature of reality. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, if you can help stop suffering, folks, bring it on. All right. Now, people think this is ridiculous. No, it's not. In fact, there is a huge thing happening right now amongst very rich Silicon Valley people and other very wealthy people who are dedicating huge amounts of their resources and time to suss out everything they can do right now. It's called biohacking, to increase aging, slow aging, avoid cancer, and you name it. We're trying to do it ourselves. The ETs, on the other hand, are looking down going, "That's nice try, folks, but we're way past that." And so when you talk disclosure, when you talk post-disclosure, when you talk open contact, all of which could happen in the next 2 years, you are getting into a huge universe of possibilities, all of which are being withheld from us because of the political policies of the military intelligence complex, with the aid of politicians who capitulate, of the United States and the other nations. That's the simplest way I can put it for those that are wondering why the hell we're doing all this and devoting our lives to this. Is it a hobby? Are we nuts? Whatever. I just told you what.
Dang. Well said.
I promise shorter answers. I swear to God. Give me an easy one. Any question, I'll give you a short answer to. Otherwise, people are going to start getting irritated.
No, that was fantastic. It was interesting. You talked about the trajectory of our discoveries and how we utilize those discoveries, both positive and negative, and the fact that we're being observed, and that at certain points they're stepping in. Okay, the bomb, that's a bit too far. You might want to come back from that point. That's a really interesting correlation to me.
Yeah. Every civilization, every intelligent civilization with consciousness beings has had the same problem we've had. That technology, knowledge, can be used for destructive or constructive purposes without getting to evil, bad, whatever that, good, bad, evil. No, just constructive, destructive. Okay. You can take a certain technology and build an incredible bridge, and you can use similar technology to blow it up in about, a minute, right? Might take 2 years to build it, might take 20 minutes to destroy it. That's entropy. That's the entropic process underway. Every civilization has had to deal with this duality. And the one thing you can say about every one of the civilizations engaging us is they figured it out. They've solved that problem, right? If you have a hammer, you can build a house, or you can go kill all your neighbors with it, right? They have figured out, if you've got a hammer, you just build the house. You don't go kill people with the hammer. I mean, it's that simple. They have figured it out because they're here. And even better, they don't destroy us. Because if they were in the idea that you got tech, go kill things, we would be on the list. We'd be in the menu. This is a very simplistic, broad view, but it's not. It's almost common sense. They've solved that problem. Therefore, the sooner we can start interacting with them and figure out how they solve that problem so we can solve that problem, the more we're going to have a robust future, not simply for us, but for everything else we destroy. We will destroy anything, ourselves, our friends, animals, cats, dogs, plants. We'll destroy oceans, biospheres. There is nothing that humans will not destroy with the technologies they have. I think they've detonated a number of nuclear weapons in space. I think they may have detonated one on the moon. If they get a chance, they'll do one on Mars, right? And they'll kill some Martian microbes we hadn't found. There is nothing that humans will not destroy because they haven't solved the problem of the duality and the entropic process. That you can create more disorder or you can build more order, right? And what are you going to do? Make a choice, make a decision. The non-intelligent aspects, the non-living parts of this universe don't have that choice. All right. And so if some asteroid kind of, heads our way and comes down and, wipes out billions of animals and really upsets our biosphere, it wasn't a choice. That was pure entropy. And I have no ill feelings toward that asteroid that landed in made the Chicxulub impact crater in the Gulf of Mexico, killed a lot of animals. It wasn't personal. Okay, so there's a lot of that going on, and that's the nature of the universe. But the moment you get intelligence and sentience and consciousness, you get choice. The asteroid did not have a choice. We do, right? And I assure you, we're almost where, well, actually, let me put it this way. Here's the difference between the Chicxulub asteroid and the situation now. We have the technology, basically. We can actually do it now, but soon we could do it easily. To go out into the asteroid belt and find an asteroid even bigger than that one. That one's the size of Mount Everest. We could go find one that's 5 times the size of Mount Everest. It's cruising around, the sun, not harming anybody. And we make the choice to attach a propulsion device to it. This actually was used in the incredible sci-fi series, The Expanse, which everybody should go watch. One of the best sci-fi series ever, if not the best. And one of the stars in there is a friend of mine, Thomas Jane, fantastic guy. And attach a propulsion device and direct that asteroid to come and hit the Earth. And its impact would be far worse than the 160 million years ago. I mean, it would basically turn the Earth into a bunch of ash. There wouldn't be, you couldn't find enough, there would hardly be any living things anywhere. The living things would literally be deep underground. And it would be a choice. And that's the difference. Now, we have the ability to be, in many respects, more destructive than the natural world and do it by choice. That makes us really a problem to ourselves and anybody else near us. And so if you're wondering why the hell the ETs are all over the place these days, why they're flying around underground bases, right? That you need one basic answer. There it is.
Yeah, that's the best explanation I've heard. And you're bordering there into the weaponization of space, which Dr. Carl Rosen addressed. Messages from Warner von Braun. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah, the Chinese just announced that they've developed a very effective satellite killing satellite. It's a special kind of satellite that has the ability to kill other satellites using condensed microwaves and kind of stuff like that. And it made a big splash. And it's out there on Google. Go check it out. Right, just let you know. Hey, when the space war comes, we got some goods here. And Russia's done the same. Carol has always been clear that we're headed for a war in space too. And in The Expanse, we're having wars in the solar system. The Expanse was brilliant because without getting into ETs much, and it's mostly political, but there's an extraterrestrial aspect to it. But the writer of that series of books, I'd love to meet this person, essentially took the way we conduct our affairs on this planet and transposed it to conducting our affairs in the solar system pretty much along the same lines, only with all the cool sci-fi aspects of that. It's sheer genius, all right? And so essentially what he's saying is that, hey, we're just going to go to Mars and everywhere else and continue to act like we do now. Now, of course, this implies that while we are misbehaving throughout the solar system, we haven't destroyed our civilization through nuclear weapons. However, it ends up going in that direction anyway. So what I'm saying is that this is the best way that I can interpret what's happening, why it's happening, and where it's going. And it is really a seminal time. This is it, right? I don't care how many pyramids the ETs built. So what? Who cares? Right? Who gives a damn? Okay. They built some pyramids. Good for them. Right? I don't care what they did back then. What's going on now is absolutely seminal. It is beyond description in terms of its implications, in terms of our trajectory, which goes back. The genetic evolutionary process took billions of years to get to where we had a set of Homo species. And then it's taken hundreds of thousands of more years for one of those Homo species to turn into, well, it took a very long time, millions of years, for one of those Homo species to become Homo sapiens sapiens, which have now been around about 300,000 years, right? That is a very long trajectory, all right? And various things happened over that millions of years, most of which were boring as hell. But what's happening now is like an absolute critical point in the multi-billion year history of life on this planet, the multi-million years evolution of the Homo species, and of course, the history of Homo sapiens sapiens. Everything after this time will change in ways we cannot even imagine and take us to places we cannot even imagine. That prior to, going back billions of years, couldn't possibly happen. And it's going to happen fast. It's not going to take millions of years. It's going to take hundreds of years to go to extraordinary places. That's how important this time is. That's how important this paradigm shift is. And Danny Sheehan, who, Danny Sheehan is one of the key messengers here. I mean, he's been talking about this for decades, and really talking about it now. And he will talk about it at great length. He can even talk about it longer than I can talk about it. Okay. I'm doing my best to explain it to people, but I am 3 Harvard degrees short of a full contingency of Harvard degrees. And so I don't quite have the genius or the skills to put it in a certain level, but I'm pretty good at getting it across to just regular people who are trying to understand what the hell's going on here. And so I'm happy to do that. But if you listen to Danny, you can get a more powerful sense that this is the greatest paradigm shift in history. There may never be another shift this big, because after we get into a post-disclosure world, we go inner solar system, and then we go inner star. I mean, a lot of cool things are going to happen, but it's hard to imagine a transition more extraordinary for our lifeline than this. And so the way it's been treated by short-minded politicians and hyper military defenders, but most importantly, the way it's been a victim, this opportunity, this paradigm shift, a victim of just who we are, what we are, where we've been. In other words, a victim of what we are, which is not it's not an intense put down. It's true in every person's life. Every single human being eventually is going to become, to one degree or another, the victim of what they have become, who they were. And so at some point, you don't want that to happen. You don't want the first 50 years of your life to create a situation where the rest of your life, you're going to be the victim of those 50 years, and it's going to be very unpleasant. But that's life. That's the nature of things. We are right now being the victim of our entire history, particularly in the what we'll call post-flood era, 12,000 years. How do you blame? I mean, where do you put the blame? I mean, a bunch of people trying to live, forming groups, building cities, whatever, try to get along, right? It wasn't like they planned all this. They sat down and said, how can we work this out so we really screw everything up 5,000 years from now? We are who we are. And now we have to transcend who we are, and who we were, rather. And if we don't, then we will be the victim. Our whole civilization will be the victim of who we are, which is a pretty substantial and powerful thing. So powerful, so important, that apparently a lot of ETs have come to engage this moment in ways we're still trying to understand. And if every person on Capitol Hill, if every person in the defense industry, right, and if the intelligentsia of our civilization, the intellectuals and the academics, could really understand that, if that could be gotten across to them, I believe they would absolutely step to the plate, step up and say, oh, absolutely, we've got to get this done. We've got to get it done right. But this is not something simple that you can get. I've spent 28 years trying to figure out, and there are, a lot of people out there that don't have anywhere near the time or the resources to do that. And so we're doing the best we can. Right now, I am feeling pretty optimistic, but not too optimistic. I'm feeling optimistic in the probabilities near term, but I can't get too optimistic because at the same time, we are also facing high probabilities of catastrophe. That's what I'm saying. It's like driving along in a car, feeling really good about where things are going. Okay. And now all of a sudden you realize you're driving on the wrong side of the road. And you're thinking, I still feel pretty good, but boy, if I don't change lanes here, it doesn't matter how good I feel or what my prospects are. And it's kind of like that. And so I don't want to get too optimistic because at any moment, there's about half a dozen really, really terrible things without getting into asteroids or even the Yellowstone supervolcano that could disrupt all of this, permanently set it aside and lead to, well, that post-apocalyptic world we love to watch on TV. I said I was going to give you short answers, didn't I? I'm really sorry. I'm not. It's just not something I'm capable of.
No, that's totally fine. But I would like to drill down a little bit, maybe deeper on you said a couple times, basically, I don't know how to even word it. Like there's multiple, let's call them species of ETs.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Like maybe potentially, how many, or, what do they look like? What are they called? That kind of thing. I'm just trying to get an idea of what your thoughts might be on that. Because for folks who are sort of new to this topic, everybody sort of knows what the gray things look like, right? But
Yeah.
What do you think overall? Is there more than that?
Okay. First of all, species is the best term we've got. It's okay, but let's keep in mind that species essentially refers to certain genetic strains within a living entity. There's a genetic there, and species refers to living things that can propagate within a certain bandwidth, right? And if you can't, then you're another species. Okay, that's basic, right? It's good. Now we're talking about other life that didn't evolve here. So unless that life can propagate with us, then it's also another. It's not our species, right? And so they're another species. Okay, I get that. But what if they can propagate with us? Or what if there's a way to do, then it gets more complicated. And so the term is a little loose, but we'll use it. Fundamentally, we're assuming that if life can evolve on one planet, it can evolve on multiple planets. Okay. And if you've got 5 different looking entities here, it's more likely that they evolved on 5 different planets than that they all evolved on the same planet. Which brings us to another interesting little tidbit.
Yep.
One of the lines of inquiry that Ancient Aliens gets into. Love that show. I've seen most of them. Need to watch the rest. I've been on a few. Anybody that throws shade at Ancient Aliens, I'm not happy. Some of the stuff is completely out in the field, but there's some great stuff on that show. One of the threads that comes up a lot, which I really am intrigued about, is that what we've learned in the last 40, 50 years, at one time, we had a very limited view of the genetic lines leading into Homo sapiens. and we would find the odd ancient whatever somewhere, and we'd try to assess it, Australopithecus africanus and Australia, so whatever the hell. But then it started to become clear, and now we understand that there were a substantial number of Homo lines, right? And maybe all of them, certainly a number of others, clearly could have evolved to become spacefaring, computer-using, net-watching, conscious beings, right? Would have been called a little something different. Would have been Homo sapiens sapien, have been Homo neanderthalis, whatever the hell. But it didn't happen. And that raises two interesting points. One could make a case that two fully, highly conscious, advanced, intelligent species evolving on the same planet, particularly ones that can't interbreed, was not going to go well. Not going to go well at all. Because even within our own species, we're constantly killing versions of ourselves, right? You could be a Homo sapiens sapien, but you've got your skin color's wrong. You must die, Okay, yeah, you get a different religion. You must die. And so two separate advanced species developing technology on the same planet, right? That they can't interbreed. The idea that they'll be cool, no problem. Let's just get along. Probably one's going to kill off the other. Now, we already have some indications that some of those Homo speciesians may have eliminated one of the other Homo species. And so that says pretty much one advanced, intelligent, technology-using species per planet, right? After that, you're aiming too high, okay? Mm-hmm. And that brings up one of the coolest points in this issue for later examination. I'm dying to find out more about this. It's well in play, hasn't been nailed down. But if I'm the ETs and I understand this dynamic, and I'm observing a planet that's got about 8 or 9 or 10 Homo species developing, I'm thinking if they have a certain appreciation for a planet ultimately generating an advanced high technology civilization, right? In other words, you start in the mud and the slime and the ocean, and then you're going to the moon billions of years later. That's kind of cool. We did it. We like to encourage it. And so you pick one of those Homo species, and using your very advanced, very cool genetic science, you come on down and you tweak them so that is the one that's going to emerge out of the group. All the other ones fall away into extinction. And therefore, our very existence here is essentially because of genetic manipulation that they did, which is not the case for the chimpanzees or the monkeys or the what they call them, the bono something. Anyway, no, they don't have that. We do. That's pretty cool, right? And one of the things about that thread that intrigues me is that everybody keeps raising a question. Most people raise a question, very legitimate question. When you start talking about the ET presence and everything else, and they're here and they're there and they're whatever, and people say, why? It's a good question. Why? Why are they here? Why do they bother? Why are they going through all this stuff? Well, the fundamental answer may be that the reason they're engaging us, and it's us. I mean, I'm sure they appreciate the coral reefs and they love, the whales and everything else, but they're not here for them. They're here for us. The why may be as simple as this. They are responsible for the fact that we exist at all as a advanced species, right? Otherwise, we would have just been one more Homo species that may have gone extinct. Right? And there may be no Homo species right now. That they're responsible. They have a substantial vested interest. Not only that, they may have been coming back and engaging us over the years along those lines. In other words, we are part of their worldview, part of their world. That explains it to me completely. All right? But it gets even more interesting since we're going there. Is that one of the other whys that comes up is why this group? There's about 5 or 6 that are well established as being pretty present. based on the testimony of hundreds of thousands of contactees who either retrieved their memories or had them from day one. And then there's some outliers, right? Some entity that's pretty weird looking that may have actually been here and then went away. You know, kind of like a tourist, dropped in, did something, people go, what the hell? And then they took off. The other group, though, consistent. So the simple question is, why that group as opposed to 5 others? I mean, clearly there must be a rather broad spectrum of conscious living entities out there with tech. Why that group? Is it because they happen to be the closest to us? In other words, however they go star to star, it's not infinitely powerful, that, you know, it's still a chore. And so it's like those are in a group of 50 light years, something like that. That's a possibility. Can't rule it out, but there's no really evidence for that. In fact, sometimes they tell the contactees they're from a star system, and that happens to be way out there, right? Well, here's another possibility. If you look at the representations, and there they vary, but if you look at the basic representations of the core group that are engaging us, some people have failed to note something rather important. The reptilians. Why do we call them reptilians or reptoids? Because they look very reptilian. That's why we call them that. Really, very reptilian. In fact, they look like they came right out of one of those sci-fi movies. Okay? How did they get to be reptilian? Well, I would suggest that they have a lot of reptilian DNA in them, and they're also very smart, and they have computers and stuff, but they have reptilian DNA in them. What are the chances that that reptilian DNA evolved completely separately on another planet 1,000 light years away, and thus they just happened to end up looking that way when they showed up here? I don't think so. And so they've got reptilian DNA. Where did it come from? It came from Earth. You've got the insectoids that have several names associated with them. Why do they look insect-like? I would suggest it's because they have insect DNA. Okay, fine. There you go. Where did that come from? Came from Earth. When? Who knows? Could have been 10 million years ago, 100 million years ago. Somebody came and got some insect DNA and left town with it. And then you get to the Nordics, and to some degree the tall whites. They really look very much like us. Why do you think that is? Because they've got human DNA in them. And then you get to the grays. Okay, I get it. The grays, they don't look too human. They don't look like anything really on the planet. They are bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. But that's common. That's probably common throughout the entire galaxy. And that is because of the nature of physics and gravity. Life has to, well, there may be an exception, but the life that we're familiar with is emerges on a planet in a gravitational field. And so as it evolves and adapts to that, we know that the most efficient way that a being like ourselves that can carry a significant brain and what have you, and have the abilities that we have, the most efficient version of that entity is 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head. You do not need 3 arms. You do not need 3 legs, right? And you really don't need 2 heads. And so that is the most efficient being to get and do the things that we do. And so based upon just the simple laws of physics and gravity, that's going to be the case. Now, the movie Arrival, this brilliant movie, Arrival, was the first movie ever that truly engaged the idea of an advanced being with extraordinary technology being utterly different from us. And I got it, okay? But that's just the movie. The the contactees are being engaged by 2 heads, 2 legs, one head, 2 legs, 2 arms. But that brings us to the gays. They are that. They are bipedal, single-headed. But they don't look like us. And so there's no genetic connection then, except for one thing. The grays seem to be the most dominant entity involved in genetic contact with us. They are the ones that are doing the hybridization. I'm not aware of any reports of reptilian human hybrids being created. It's all human gray hybrids. There's about three different versions of him. Why that is, I have no idea. And so the other four already have and have had a genetic connection to us, and the grays are in the process of creating one. And that explains why it's that group that's here, which also explains something else. Okay. Well, I mean, and this, it's that genetic connection, okay, that is another reason why it's that group that's here. But it's also that genetic connection that helps to explain why they care about the future of the human race. Because they have us. We are part of them, right? And so it's not a stretch to go, what, oh, that's why they're here. That's why they're engaging us at this time when we're really about ready to drive off the edge of the world. And then that leaves me with another point in this, once again, not short answer. There's something that I like to talk about, and since we've gone there, let me do it. And no disrespect to Elon Musk, but he's got this thing about we got to go to Mars to save the human race. Well, first of all, living on Mars is not going to be what you think it's going to be like. It's going to be awful. Secondly, it's going to be incredibly expensive. And thirdly, we don't need to do it. All right. In other words, I'd rather spend those billions of dollars on taking care of the human race right here. Right. You know, there's a lot of people need some food, some clothing, some housing, some toilets, all that kind of stuff. They really need it bad, and they're very unhappy. And so rather than spend trillions of dollars to get some people to Mars so that we can keep the human race going after it dies out here, we don't need to do that. Why? Because I am highly confident that our genetics, our DNA is well represented in this galaxy, and that there are already humans out there that can continue on our line very nicely. And so the galaxy is never going to be rid of Homo sapiens sapiens, though it might be seeing more advanced versions of Homo sapiens sapiens. So we don't need to do it. The ETs have already done it for us. All right. And so when you look at, and if you want to take that a little further, when you look at, say, the Nordics, this fascinates me. I love talking about this. When you look at the Nordics, which are virtually, you can't tell them apart from humans, except they're much better looking. Mm-hmm. How do you account for that? Well, there's not too many ways that can happen. All right. Here is one way: an entirely different biosphere with an entirely different history evolves over billions of years and creates a bunch of life. And one of the species that emerges out of that looks exactly like a Swedish runway model. Okay. That's possible. I put the possibility at 0.00001%, right? Okay. It's way worse than the odds of winning the lottery, which is ridiculously large, because they give all the money to the winner and nothing to the other people. I hate that. And so it's not that. So if it's not that, how in the hell could that be? Right? It's not hard. It's simple. 200,000 years ago, where things were not as interesting as they are now, you're hanging out at the planet doing some work, and okay, you decide, okay, I think we're going to go get a couple thousand humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, and we're going to take them with us. They're not going to ask. We're not going to ask permission. And they're not going to put in a reservation. We're just taking them with us. And I assure you, there are no consequences. And so they took humans off this planet, which had to be within the last 300,000 years. Well, they could have even been. They could have even taken pre-human humans, one of the Homo species, and developed them off planet at the same time that they were tweaking, whatever the hell. The point is, let's just say they took some bunch of humans. If they took humans off this planet, say 200,000 years ago, they were taking entities that if you could time travel them forward, right, and have them be born in our time, they could go to MIT. They could do everything we're doing. They were Homo sapiens sapiens like us. They were just as smart as us. They just didn't, have a a lot of history and hadn't developed some things or whatever, but they could do that. And so they take those humans and they basically live out and continue forward for how many years? Could be thousands, could be 10,000 in somewhere else. They're evolving off planet, but they are still us. And so in addition to evolving off planet, and this may be the reason why they were taken, they were tweaked. They were, how would you say, enhanced. They had some benefits that we didn't have. They all got to go to Ivy League schools, whatever the hell, right? And so they come to visit us. They look just like us, but they're not us. Exactly. They have other abilities that we don't have, but basically they're us, which takes that level of why to another place, right? Why are the Nordics here? Well, first of all, they're us. They're better versions of us. We're about to have the biggest paradigm shift in history. It's like they're coming home to celebrate it with us, to be part of it somehow. I don't know, but that makes total sense to me. That explains them. And that takes me to my final point, which I really, you know, I know I'm starting to bore people with this, but it's a point that if there was some way I had the power to just really spread this, is this. For those of you that are trying to get out of your very parochial and narrow mindsets that leads to all kinds of awful things that you do and pain and suffering for yourself, and try to see a bigger picture, something along the lines of Star Trek and some of our better sci-fi, but in a more realistic way, a little less fiction, a little more common sense. Here it is. Based upon what we know about ET activity here, as accounted by hundreds of thousands of contactees, and what we know about physics and so forth, the conclusion is this. For untold millions of years, civilizations that have come and gone have gone star to star, because apparently they can do that, and they have interacted with other life spheres, and they have taken samples, because that's what you do, right? you don't go to the Canary Islands and just draw pictures of them. You bring some of that stuff back, you know, to study it back in the UK. They have taken genetic samples from life systems throughout the galaxy, and they've been passing them around. It's taken from planet A, you do some work, and then you're integrating, you share it with planet D, and whatever the hell. The point I'm trying to make is that the Milky Way galaxy is already genetically connected from one end to the other, to one degree or another, okay? There's non-human DNA from elsewhere probably involved here. Our DNA is being used somewhere else. In some cases, the life system simply cannot be connected, cannot be integrated. They're too distinctly different. But nevertheless, we are already a connected galaxy in that regard. There's a genetic thread going through the entire galaxy that overlaps and integrates with multiple systems. That's what's out there, right? Mr. Skeptic, Mr. We Are Alone scientist that is overly impressed with your own education. That's what's waiting for us. That's what we can learn about once we can get over this little problem about there's no there, right? And not destroy ourselves. And if you give a broad interpretation to what the ETs are telling contactees, the messages they're giving them in various ways, telepathic message as well as images, and other things that have turned up as we've tried to investigate this, the way they conduct themselves and so forth, it reinforces this, all right? The idea that this is a very narrow thing that's happening on the Earth and a couple of species that are interested in us, and it isn't happening anywhere else in a galaxy with 200 minimum billion stars, and hasn't been going on for billions of years, which is how old this galaxy is ridiculous. It's absurd, but it's hard for people to expand to that level without the help of psychedelic substances, which unfortunately I don't use, and I've had no luck there. The point is that if you work at it, though, you can get out there and start to see the galaxy as a defined, integrated unit in some way, connected by the laws of physics. and connected by the behavior and activities of advanced civilizations with the ability to go star to star. And our ability and privilege to teach that to every student that wants to learn about it on this planet, our ability to learn and understand that and take that into our worldview is being blocked by a limited number of old world thinking, uptight, stressed out politicians and national defense people in the United States, with the cooperation of similar individuals in our allied countries, and with the implicit cooperation of dictatorships around the world. Those individuals, which represent a tiny percentage of the population of this planet, 6 billion, are saying, you can't go there. You can't know that, right? Screw you, right? We're going to continue to do things where they are. And that's not going to be available to you, right? Maybe it's available to us. You know, if the ETs want to take us and show us the galaxy, please come. But you're not going to know, because we are not going to let you know. That is at core what the truth embargo is. For those that are wondering why we're working so damn hard to end it, it has to end. It will end, or we will end. In other words, the ETs will take the position, look, if you really want to screw everything up, take yourself back thousands of years, ruin it all, maybe even ruin the life systems, fine. And then we end. Okay? So there's the choice. And those that are standing between us making that choice have got to give it up. There are people that are preventing disclosure, far more powerful and far more important. Dr. Kirkpatrick is not preventing disclosure. He is basically a good person who is the victim of the truth embargo. There have been a lot of victims, but I think most people know who I'm talking about. Most of the people that are preventing disclosure from happening are unnamed, not known for that reason. They are hidden, they are classified, maybe they work underground, right? But they're doing all this sub rosa, where it's easier to do and more comfortable. Those are the people I'm referring to. And they have got to make a decision, because we're going to end this thing, and then you're going to have to be held accountable to some degree, and asked to account for this. Hopefully in a way that's not destructive, but you're going to have to answer for this, because this is not some small thing that you're screwing with here, right? You're not, the Catholic Church messed around with some basic Newtonian physics, right? Based upon the way things work. Looks like the Earth goes around the sun, right? And not the other way around. And they messed with that. They caused some problems. They slowed science down. It took 200 years for just a book about that to turn up in the library, well after the Catholic Church had finally admitted, yeah, the Earth goes around the sun. This is 10,000 times worse than that. So for those of you that are pissed off that they burned Giordano Bruno at the stake, you should really be pissed off at what's going now, because what is happening now transcends that. That was nothing, and compared to those that are blocking the advancement of understanding in this world right now. I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
I'm surprised you're still here.
Oh,
been fascinating.
It's always fascinating to talk with you. I have
one other reason. I'm pumped up. I mean, look, this hearing has got me supercharged. I'm sorry. I mean, I actually will calm down in about a week, and I wouldn't be quite this intense, but right now I'm really feeling it.
No,
I love it.
It's amazing. I have one more question, real quick. I want to throw out your way, and it's shifting gears yet again. But in regards to the Langley incident, where the drones were over Langley, this was what, in 2018, 2019, I think it was, or maybe I'm messing that up. But it's recently come out into the news where the military has admitted that they don't know what the drones are. They're calling them drones, but they don't know where they belong or where they came from. They were floating over the base for like 11 or 17 days, and they did nothing at all to shoot them out of the sky or anything like that. Are you familiar with that one? Because it's been making the news rounds. And then what are your thoughts on that overall?
It's another example of how something is happening, gets twisted and distorted, and nobody knows the hell what to do with it. Because again, we don't have an honest engagement of the issue. Let's parse it out. What's a drone? Most people know what a drone is. It's something flies without a sentient being in it. Okay? All right? If there's a sentient being inside of it, it's not a drone anymore. It's a piloted craft. Okay. And we have created drones. We got drones. Lots of drones. We've created advanced drones, small drones, big drones, drones carrying weapons and cameras. We're up to our ass in drones. Okay. So we know what a drone is. The government knows what a drone is. Okay. We also have all kinds of craft flying around, right? Substantive craft that are being picked up and sighted, hundreds of thousands of sightings. Some of them have crashed. Turns out they had pilots. That doesn't mean the other craft don't have pilots. They may not be. The other could be drones. But these other craft operate kind of in a certain way. So as we've advanced forward in the disclosure process, more and more things are coming out. The government is really being forced to acknowledge and deal with stuff they rather would not deal with. And one of the latest versions of that is it's being revealed. Again, every witness that comes forward makes it easier for the next witness. Every study program that gets announced is going to make it easier for the next one to be announced, and so forth. And that's where we're going. Okay. So the latest batch of things that's interesting is drones swarming around ships and bases. Okay. Now, first of all, the only reason I think they're calling them drones, or even it makes any sense, would be that apparently some of them are pretty small. So if that is true, then I can understand why the government says we got a bunch of drones over there. But if some of them are bigger than that, they don't know if that's a drone. If it's big enough to hold a sentient being, they don't know that. So let's be clear here. All right, but whatever. They're swarming over our ships. Now let's get down to brass tacks. Let's don't mince words here. Here is the real world. If craft, I don't care what size, right? But small enough that they're drone-ish, or other things, it could be drones, it might have a pilot in it, starts swarming around our military ships in advanced facilities, we will blow the holy hell out of them. We will absolutely decimate them. We will destroy them. Period. You go get yourself a Cessna 142 and you head out to one of our advanced military facilities or one of our warships and you buzz it a couple of times. The fourth time you buzz it, you're going to be turned into mulch, if not the second time you buzz it. So all this other fancy stuff and dancing and all these kind of I hate that, right? That's what happens. But that's not happening. So what's the problem here? Okay.
My point exactly.
Why? And the military knows this. I mean, they know that the truth embargo is ending. And so what are you going to do? And so this thing comes up. And so they're admitting we got all these drones flying around our bases. And the first question is, why don't you shoot them down? And the answer can't be, well, it's against the non-intervention principle or whatever. We don't want to hurt anybody. Why don't you shoot them down? They can't answer that, because if they answered that, they would have to reveal things that they are not ready to reveal. Okay, there's only two reasons that you don't blow these things out of the sky. Okay, there's a couple of reasons. One, damn well they're extraterrestrial, and it's generally understood within, I think, our government that shooting down ET craft is not a good thing. Now, there is this speculation we're shooting them down all the time. This keeps coming up. I don't see the evidence for it. But if they want to bring out clear evidence and video showing us shooting down a half a dozen ET craft, okay, got it. And it's still going to be the stupidest thing they could possibly do, but whatever. All right. But no. So they're ET related, and for some reason, it's not advisable to be shooting down these drones. Not to mention the fact that if these are ET drones, right, and not something you bought on Amazon, and you're shooting them down, you're going to have parts of ET drones all over the friggin' place, right, floating in the ocean around the base, and that's not helpful, right, because everybody's going to pick them up, and the next thing you know, they're selling ET stuff on Amazon. So that would be one reason. The other reason would be that they could fire at them, but it wouldn't work. Okay, that's another reason. Meaning, yeah, we can try to take them down, but we can't. We know that, so we just have to live with them. Man, they're flying here, they're flying there, nothing we can do. The third reason is that, yeah, we could fire at them and possibly do some damage, but they can fire back. And that would be bad. We would get a couple of drones, they would sink one of our fine destroyers. Okay? Not a good trade. That's the only three reasons. Now, is the media approach it that way? Do the questions get asked that way? No, they don't, right? And so, but that's what's in my view of that. It's pretty straightforward. And now, if they're, but let's go deeper. If they're extraterrestrial drones, this is basically a non-piloted craft. So any craft up there, any gravitic craft or whatever the hell it is, it doesn't have an ET in it, that's a drone. So if they are ET drones and they're swarming around ships and bases, I would suggest it's not because we've got to check up on that base. There's a whole lot to find out about. Let's take 30, 40 drones, swarm them for a while, pick up a lot of intel. What? It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. No, to do that. The only reason that you would swarm a U.S. military facility with drones is to send a message. I just spent a lot of quality time with Bob Salas. And Bob Salas, I mean, I wasn't going to mention this because generally you don't do this. But as it happens, Bob Salas and I met with Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who was the chair of the subcommittee, the hearing. And it was part of an interview that was filmed. But I had no intention of mentioning it because if you have a chance to meet with a member of Congress and you go out and start yakking about it, it's not kosher. Looks like you're taking advantage, you're bragging, that kind of stuff. And other members may say, I don't want to talk to you. So, but the gentleman who did the filming for a doc has put it out on the web. It's out there. And so Bob and I are sitting there talking with Congresswoman Mace. It was an excellent interview. The reason that Bob was there, the reason that I got him into that hearing is that Bob Salas, for 30 years, has been trying to get a committee to allow him and a number of other command SAC base officers to testify under oath about the shutdown of the nuclear weapons. One of the single, if not the most important thing we know about extraterrestrials and their activities. And because that testimony is ultimately powerful, the DOD has done everything it can, short of making them disappear or destroying their reputations on TikTok, to just ignore them, so that hopefully the media and the Congress would follow suit. And that's exactly what happened. They've done everything they can conceivably do for 30 solid years, and they have not been able to testify. And one of my goals in my work is to see that happens. And so some great strides were taken leading up to that hearing, which would have been difficult to do if they didn't have the hearing. So one thing leads to another. It all works together to take us where we got to go. And so prior to the hearing, I was able to distribute a full physical set of affidavits of about 10 of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, all, I think every one of them Air Force, to 10 of the appropriate offices with a cover letter. And all these affidavits are signed affidavits to their testimony of what happened, including Bob Salas. And then, because why not, I waited 5 days and mailed a set into the offices, but this time to a specific person. I walked the others in. Now it's the campaign's underway. The election hasn't started. So there's a couple people in there. They're partying. They're having a good time. And I just, we chatted it up and took a card and left. Then I mailed it back to a specific office person. It takes 4 days to get through the security systems, the anti-ricin, a radioactive tech system, so that the mail doesn't hurt them, which is, of course, the way things are now. And so I knew it would arrive about 10 days later. So it was like two physical sets of the affidavits went into those 10 offices. And then an electronic file of those affidavits was emailed into Mace's office. So that all happened. And then as it worked out, Captain Salas and I were able to sit down and he was able to present personally to her what's in those affidavits. And so I'm anticipating that the affidavits of these witnesses is very soon going to start getting exposed to a number of the subcommittee, really for the first time. You know, the reason I had these physical sets of affidavits is because 14 years ago, Bob Salas, Robert Hastings, and several other witnesses, I think Shindele, Jameson, gave a press conference at the National Press Club upstairs above my office. A number of media, quite a few press showed up in the Holman Lounge, and they presented those affidavits and gave their testimony to them. They then went back and did basically nothing. They had in their hands one of the greatest news stories of all time, but it's just not the thing. You're not supposed to deal there. So they read a couple of silly, basic articles, nothing much. The DOD said nothing. The Washington Post wrote a comedy piece about this press conference. But when it was all over, Bob gave me all the leftover affidavits, about 50 copies. And they've been in my office for 14 years until now. So when I needed to make this maneuver, I just took them off the shelf and started handing them out to members of Congress or the offices in Congress. And now those affidavits are in play. It only took 14 more years. Okay. And so what, the point I was making. Okay. Here's the point I was making. It's so bad now that I'm about to turn 78 that I will start off a discussion about a point that I'm trying to make. And by the time I get to the point, I forgot what the point is. This is very unsettling. But here is the point.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay. She asked this question. Everybody asked this question, right? Captain Salas, Captain Shindele, right? Lieutenant, I think it was Captain, I'm not sure what his rank was, Robert Jacobs. Why are they doing this? Why did they turn the missiles off? Do you have an idea? Why would they do this? Not once, not twice, but a number of times. Actual number not known, because after the first couple of incidences where, it happened and they realized this is a thing and that they could turn them off anytime they wanted to, the Air Force got serious about this. Okay. And the first thing they did was, what they did do right away is that all of the security guys, the ones that actually saw the craft, they immediately reassigned them to all 7 points of the earth, right? They sent them off as far as they could so that they couldn't talk. That's the one thing they did. Okay. And that has helped to ensure that the security people, none of them have actually come forward. Plus they were younger families. But the SAC base officers, the one that were down in the silo, well, yeah, you could assign them someplace, but it wouldn't be that hard for them to find each other. And then I think eventually, at some point, any nuclear shutdown events, they closed it down. In other words, they got to the SAC base officers, they got to the security people, and they made it really clear. If you want to be another Bob Salas, we're going to make your life a living hell. And so there could have been other events, but they wrapped them up, tightened them up. But the other ones, too late. And then you had some witnesses from stuff in Russia that they couldn't control that. And so we became aware of Russian missile shutdowns. All right. And so over the years, these individuals were trying to bring this issue out. And of course, they kept being asked the same question: why? Why? And all of them pretty much come to the same conclusion. I think they're all on the same page. What is a direct threat to the humans? No. Okay. Okay. Was it braggadocio? No. Okay. It was a message. Pure and simple. It was a message. We can shut down your missiles, and then we let you put them, turn them back on, and that's the message. Think about it. All right. And we could go on along about that, but there's not enough time for that, but it's a message. And so when we discuss the drones, all right, if anybody wants my opinion, it's simple. Why are these drone swarms taking place? They are a message, and they are a recent message. Those other messages were back in the 60s and the 70s. Then they kind of chilled out on that. Now we're moving towards disclosure, but there's still a lot of pushback from a lot of, I don't know, misguided individuals. And they want this done. I have always said there is a time frame, a line that they're under, and we're starting to push the boundaries of that timeline. And so it's another message. In other words, if they can drone swarm our destroyers or military bases, that's really irritating. In other words, it's hard to seal that, right? A flyover is one thing, but when reports are coming in, the drone, and then the guys are taking photos, right? Because this is not 1967. They're out there with their iPhones and they're filming a drone swarm. This is a message, Get on with it, guys. All right, we're not going away. We're going to keep making this harder for you. So get on with it. Get this done. You're embarrassing yourselves before the Galactic Alliance. Yeah, they're laughing at you, right? Get with it. That's what I think is going on with the drone swarms. But no, nobody asked me. Nobody wants to know my opinion about that.
Well, we just did. Yeah,
they're asking the researchers, right? You get these elaborate explanations. I get it. I understand. But I'm just a basic guy, very nuts and bolts. I look at this as pretty damn obvious to me. It's a message they're sending to the United States military and the U.S. government. There are other messages they're sending, but that's a pretty good one, and it's recent, and it's in play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
I may have misspoke. I feel like it was maybe 2021. It was super recent. I said 2018 earlier. I think it was even sooner than that.
2023.
Was
no,
it 2023?
There have been multiple reports of drone swarms. You may have missed some. A lot of them at ships at sea. Okay. Ships at sea.
Yeah, no, I've heard about those as well.
That's a message, that's a message.
Yeah.
But that's at sea. It's like, you're out there. But when they start drone swarming bases, right? Because bases are generally there's neighborhoods nearby. And so the military is seeing, damn, the drone swarm. And then meanwhile, some guys living up the street from the base, they're going, drone swarm. And so that guarantees is going to end up on the web. So
yeah, for sure.
ETs are really probably amused by this, but also irritated by this. And so I would like to think that every time something like this happens, the ETs are going, okay, what are you going to do with that? Truth embargo people. How are you going to handle that one, right? I think that was Phoenix Lights, right? Why in the hell do you drive a massive triangle craft from one end of the state to the other? Because that was the only way home. It was like it was an Uber, and that's the Uber said that's what you do. We need to get to Mexico. Well, the Uber the thing it says we got to go across Arizona. Message. It's a message. It was a hell of a message too, and it was 1997, which is a very big year. You had the Rockefeller Initiative underway, 93, 94, 95. You've got Corso coming out. You've got Stephen Schiff coming out. And so things are cooking, right? And believe me, that was when I broke into the field, and I can assure you there was a lot of activity, a lot of things pointing toward we're getting somewhere here. And all of a sudden they fly a giant triangle over Arizona. It's a message to the government that's being irritated by Corso and Stephen Schiff and Steve Bassett and all the other activists. It's a message to them, we're not going away, and they're right. And just in case you're not getting the point, here's a giant triangle that's going to be seen by thousands of people. Deal with that. Oh, by the way, that was also the 50th anniversary of Roswell. Deal with that. Oh, I can't wait to talk to some extraterrestrials and get the details on this. Right? I want. Hey, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? What was the plan? What was the game plan? All that kind of stuff. Oh, it's going to be so cool. Of course, I'll have to have an AI computer there in order to be able to understand it. Or maybe they'll just telepathically tell me and say, Steve, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. That's why we did that. And then you did this, and you idiots. And I love this. The ETs, once we get disclosure, everybody's going to want to have them for dinner. Everybody's going to want to have them at their party so they can talk about all this stuff that went down. Talk about dining out on great stories. Assuming that interests them, probably not. But I intend to dine out on some of that stuff, post-disclosure, of course. Dining out means you're telling a great story and somebody's picking up the tab for those that don't understand that. Go ahead.
We could probably talk to you for another couple days here, but
I'm touched.
If you could remind us and everybody out there where they can get in touch with you if they want to reach out, and also you are now officially a 501c3, right? Yeah,
and that's it's promo time, right? Sit back, grab a snack. It's promo time. This won't take long. Okay, I'm going to start at the top. The newparadigminstitute.org. is now the leading and activist organization on this issue in the world. No disrespect to any others. It has gotten some funding. It's going to raise a lot more money, but don't hesitate to donate. They have a donate section there. They have multiple programs. They're going off in 8 different directions at once. And it's chaired and executive run by Daniel Sheehan, who has been involved in nonprofit activist work for 60 years. Okay, 50 years rather. Okay, and they are picking up steam. Number 2, the MUFON. MUFON is starting to expand its agenda and its mandates. It is engaging Congress. It is developing substantial media presence. Support MUFON. You don't have to become a MUFON and go out in the field and study sightings. Just support it, okay? There's plenty of reasons to support it, besides learning how to be a sighting or an incident researcher. Okay, so there's that. And then you've got the Soul Foundation. It's nonprofit, support it. Now, the Soul Foundation is looking for billionaire money, and they've got their credentials to get it. And while I appreciate the billionaires are going to donate to whoever the hell they want to, they do donate to a huge range of causes, okay? But for some reason, this is not on their menu, but that needs to change, all right? So give some thought. Right, of late, billionaires have been donating huge sums of money to political campaigns. Okay, no problem, no problem. How much? Well, the last assessment of this campaign is it's going to top out around $14 billion for the House, Senate, and presidential races. That's a lot of money. And I'm not trying to be irritating or anything, but if you spend $14 billion on a political campaign and say it's roughly split even, I think this time it was skewed Democratic. That means that $7 billion of it was thrown down the toilet. So when it comes to donating money to stuff, the old political approach, 50% of the time, your money is worthless. So donate to the Soul Foundation. It's going to be, and can be, with the proper support, the leading scientific think tank in the post-disclosure world, which brings us to UAP Disclosure Fund. Well, they're off and running. They've already got some money people involved. I'm encouraging other billionaires to take a strong look at that and say, okay, yeah, we need a think tank specifically devoted to this issue, heavily funded to deal post-disclosure. That doesn't mean you don't fund the other think tanks that are going to build up their own divisions in this. That's fine too. But hey, the UAP Disclosure Fund, they got out ahead of all those other entities. They're just that. And then Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I funded that a year ago with a publicist named Dan Harry in Hollywood. His idea, we launched it in about, how long did it take? It took about, 6-7 months. We launched it November the 3rd of last year. It is a nonprofit 501c3 pure networking entity designed to network film people and UA people, film people and film people, and so forth, by putting them up on a website that now has 180 founding members divided into UAP and Hollywood, and it's already creating deals. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is not doing the deals. They're doing the deals. They're making the money, but they're generating the content that is going to be desperately needed as we move forward. Accurate content, because they're not going to their brother-in-laws to get information or ideas about how to make this doc. They're going to the researchers that you and I all know that have been working on this for 30 years, but don't have Hollywood connections. So the HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, we really need one funder to step up with about 20 to 25,000. Really, that's all. And we can immediately get some projects going and make a difference. We don't need massive money. But so far, it's been basically out of my pocket and Dan Harari's pocket and some of the founding members. But we need somebody that gets how important that is to step in. And then lastly, but not leastly, Paradigm Research Group, which, for better or for worse, I ran for 28 years as a sole proprietorship. Looking back, whatever. I probably should have become a 501c3 sooner, but it just didn't work. The reason that I started off as a sole proprietorship is that I knew the game I was about to join up in. I was going to become the first lobbyist on the UAP issue. I had no idea what the DOD was going to think about that. Apparently, they didn't bother them that much, but I didn't know. I didn't know what would happen. And so I know that if you set up if you're a nonprofit trying to do activism, and the government doesn't like you, you are incredibly vulnerable. They can shut you down like that, right? And by shut you down, I don't mean you can't do this anymore. I mean, we've decided that you have violated certain rules and regulations, and so you now owe us taxes on every dollar you have raised. And now they not only shut you down, they bankrupted you. And so I said, it ain't going to happen to me. So I was a sole proprietorship operating strictly under the Constitution. The trouble was I didn't convert to a nonprofit soon enough, but it's been a wild and crazy ride. However, given the circumstances of late, I am now a 501c3 nonprofit in the District of Columbia. And what I needed to do, and I'm about to do, but I've been struggling to get done because everything is happening, and I'm just one guy, soon to be running an organization with a lot of volunteers and advisors, but still, and a board of directors. I have to convert the website to change it over to reflect its new role, which is more like a think tank and an education operation, not an activist operation or Stephen Bassett's vanity project, right? And then I have to install a funding module. The funding module is ready to go. I'm going to rejigger the site just as soon as I get over the next 15 interviews, which I do have scheduled. And once that's done, I'm going to slam it back out, put out a bunch of, press and releases and so forth. And people can then donate to Paradigm Research Group and get a tax deduction. I'm moving as fast as I can because I already have one major project I'm ready to do the moment I cross, say, 25,000 in deductions. And that is X Conference 2025. The 7th X Conference, following the first 6 X Conferences that were held between 2004 and 2010. And this one will be at the National Press Club, and it will be pretty cool. I mean, I think it could be an extraordinary event. I already have the hotel lined up, but I cannot secure the press conference without a full advance payment for the room, which will be refundable under a refunding schedule. But so that's the barrier that I have to get over. Without that, I cannot book the room, can't set the date in the conference. So if I get $25,000 tomorrow or whenever, then within 48 hours, I'm going to put out the notice that this conference is set. Speakers are being considered. This is the hotel. This is how much the tickets are. It's going to be at the National Press Club. And so I'm doing what I can there. But obviously, it's been pretty hectic of late. A lot of things going on. I think there was an election. I think I recall it. So I'm not there yet. But within a week, I hope to God I have the new 501c3 Paradigm Research Group launched, and people are having the opportunity to support this work. And that's it. That's my promo for today.
Just real quick, what could you elaborate a little bit more on what would the X conference be like in terms of the topic or the scope or the mission or whatnot?
X conference stood for Exopolitics Expo. It was the first conference dealing with the politics, really focused on that ever. And then I did 6 of them, all held in the Washington area. The last one was actually held at the Press Club. Every single one of them was followed by a press conference at the National Press Club. In the 2009 press conference, following the 2009 X conference, is when astronaut Edgar Mitchell stood at the podium with a CNN in front of him and a lot of other news and said, "There's extraterrestrials here." God bless you, Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did a lot of cool stuff back then, but I ran out of money. And the issue kind of went cold for a while. I mean, it's not been an easy path. So 14 years later, though, I want to do another one. And I'm just suggesting that the witnesses I can secure, given the time frame I'm looking at, which is late January, early February, and everything that's going on, I think I can put together an extraordinary conference at a time, in the right place at the right time. Will be limited to 500 people, but it will be a powerful event, and it will be the first major project of the nonprofit Paradigm Research Group. Now I have other things I want to do, but that one I know I can do. And again, I really regret that I didn't start this sooner. But whatever, you can't. Regrets are useless. Forget it. I think it's going to happen. So that's the game plan for PRG. But again, PRG is doing other stuff, right? It's continuing to be PRG. It's not waiting for that. And obviously, the major thing going on right now is that PRG is helping a very potentially successful effort to, after 57 years after the first nuclear shutdown event, we may be finally going to get the witnesses to that event in front of a Congress under oath. And boy, am I pleased about that. So there you go. That's the kind of thing I do, and all support is welcome. And I've gotten support over the years, I assure you. But now we got to take it to the next level.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for everything that you have been doing and continue to do. It's really amazing.
Okay, appreciate that. You are my heroes. You are part of what I like to call the podcast army. The development of the podcast world, which isn't been around that long, really. I mean, it kind of slowly happened, but then suddenly it went viral. It is a major shift in journalism, in a sense. It's journalism, but it's more than that. It's a major shift. It's global, incredibly powerful. And one of the reasons why the truth embargo hasn't got a chance. And when the podcast thing got really going, I don't know why everybody in the Pentagon just got together and said, "That's it. Let's get a press conference here. Go to the Senate Intel. Let's get over this." But that they continue to fight as the forces opposing them just grew and grew and grew. It's really kind of sad. But you are the podcast army. You are going to lead the change, one podcast at a time. And let me just say that a politician or an activist or a change agent that dismisses the power of podcast is making a very big mistake, right? If you think podcasts aren't important, if you turned down an opportunity to be on a massive podcast and reach millions of people because you're not comfortable with the genre, you're not engaging the world as it is now. I, on the other hand, will do every podcast in the U.S., right? So that is not a problem I have. But again, I just want to throw you the kudos. Keep it up. Better graphics, better promotion, whatever. One day you could have 2 million subscribers. You never know.
Hey, you never know. One small step for a man, right?
All right, I got to go to prepare for the next interview.
All right, thanks again. It was great.
Go next time. All
right, we'll see you later.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, Stuart. What do you think about all that?
That was fascinating. I've got so many more things to contemplate. And you know what I really appreciate about him? His sort of no-nonsense, pragmatic approach and his enthusiasm. It's absolutely infectious.
It really is. I'm charged up right now just after listening to that. And it's going to be another great conversation that we put out there. And I do want to say this might sound a little presumptuous, or I don't know if that's the right word, but I believe it was Miss Mace who said there was a very specific question that was asked in that hearing about the religious aspect of this phenomenon. And when I heard it, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe she was tuning into this channel, because I don't know that there's many or any other people out there who are having some of the conversations that we are. So just to put it out there, Miss Mace, if you are tuning in, thank you. And you have an open invite to speak with us at any time that you might want to.
Oh, I'd really love that, Mike. That's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, just to paraphrase, it wasn't said like this, but this is my translation of it. She had asked one of the witnesses about sort of religion and spirituality, and that sometimes people, she said, like, invoke religious thoughts. The way I interpreted that was maybe, invoke Jesus Christ or something, and sometimes the quote-unquote aliens disappear, sometimes they don't, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, that kind of thing. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that we've specifically talked about before, so that's why I say that.
Wow, okay, that's bordering well and truly into the esoteric side of this whole topic, so I'm 100% interested in hearing what she's got to say.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't this channel that that comment maybe came from, the fact that that aspect of this is in Washington right now and starting to sort of make the airwaves, I think, is a great thing as well.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, we're right on point here, Mike. I know I say it a lot, but I love it when guests mention other guests we've interviewed. It just feels so good.
Yeah, so if anyone hasn't seen our interview with Robert Salas, that was he was our second guest, I believe. You can go back into the archives that are there and check that out. It was quite fascinating. He goes in detail about his account with the missiles being turned off by UFOs, and then he also mentions writing a letter to the Pope, and we go into the religious side of things a little bit with him. So definitely check that out if you have not.
Yeah, that theme and that thread is often there with that spiritual or religious aspect to this whole topic. And I find that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So next time we're going to be, you're interviewing me, right? We're going to be back in our T-shirts.
Yeah, and that's something I've been looking forward to. I really am looking forward to that interview dropping.
Yeah. So that's join us in about 2 weeks from now. Well, that will be putting out there. And then at the end of that one, there's another exciting announcement coming up. So as always, thank you for your likes, comments, subscribes, and shares. Please do keep them coming. Help us spread the word and share. You can find us on audio only everywhere. And of course, our YouTube channel. Our website is universaldisclosurepodcast.com. And that's all we got for now. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So much love to everyone out there.
Yes, indeed.